but this week. Um, AJ, I never even know how to pronounce your last
I
name.
know nobody does. It's Gailey.
Gailey.
Gailey. Like the
Okay, you've just confirmed that I never knew how to pronounce your last name. Like, because I've been AJ Goeth's the best.
goalie,
Goalie.
ghoul.
I didn't even miss the L. Goalie. Okay, so
Gailey.
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 Gailey. Who, despite my inability to pronounce her name, I've known for quite a long time. She is a friend and colleague, does lovely work over at Luci Creative. And with that, I will hand it over to her and take it away.
All right, let's do this. Hi, everyone. Well, it's great to be here with you all. And Josh, thank you again so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk today about designing for an unforgettable in an age of distraction as Luci actually this week. So thanks, Josh. The timing worked out awesome. Luci has relaunched our brand, really talking a lot about memory making and how to create imprint experiences for visitors. And so this topic today is really important to discuss, and I'm excited to unpack it with you all. I'm going to run through some slides and talk about it, and then hopefully at the end we'll have time to come back together and I can hear from you all in terms of the memory making you're seeing and doing in your work and how you see it practicing and coming to life into the world that you're working in. So with that being said, let me dive in. So I recently went to see the Savannah Bananas with my family in Chicago. And I think some of you on here hopefully saw my LinkedIn post about it a few weeks ago. But it was an incredibly memorable experience. For those of you that don't know about the Savannah Bananas, they are reinventing baseball. And it literally is such a party. They have, when you get there, the brass band pumps up the crowd. There's dancing and choreographed songs and karaoke where they're including the fans. There's the cheerleading squad that they call the Dad Bod team and Dad Bod squad. I think we all agree that we could actually, some of us could actually start trying out for this group. They have the world's tallest pitcher and batter. He literally is playing baseball on stilts. They have a boy band come out into the crowd and sing songs and engage with the fans. And literally for 2 hours, you are in the show. Everyone participates. You can't help but get caught up in their energy. And I just want you to look at this for a second. This is where the White Sox play in Chicago. And look at the stadium that night. There were over 40,000 people in the crowd. Every seat was packed and booked. In order for me to get tickets, I actually had to join the fan club a year in advance to get access to the special lottery to get tickets to make sure we could go because I didn't want to lose a chance of doing that. And they sell tickets for only $65 a piece. It's all of the resale that actually increases it. So they're becoming super accessible. But you can see 40,000 people in the crowd that night. Now look at Wright Field the next week. This is where the White Sox play. This is the baseball stadium, and there is nobody in the stands. Now, the White Sox are terrible right now, so that's to be expected. But you can see baseball is struggling. It's losing its fan base. Baseball is based on information overload. Every single thing is tracked and analyzed. I mean, data, statistics. My dad and my brother still quote batting averages from 1986 of the best field and the best World Series team. But for most people, this information isn't exciting. So you're probably thinking, AJ, why are you bringing up baseball and future spaces today? Because my business and my team, we're in the business of making information fun. And when a startup team like the Savannah Bananas can do donuts around America's pastime of baseball, it's just proof that people are hungry. And we are craving community, multi-sensory stimulation, things you just can't get in your everyday life. Look at the memories we made. The Savannah Bananas gave myself and my family a night we're never going to forget. And when we design for the senses, for participation, for joy, we make moments that stick and we create what we like to see as these memories. And when you design for memories, you win. You win learning, you win loyalty, you win revenue, all at the same time. So Josh, when you talk to people on future spaces, you often focus on emerging technologies within the public space. And at Luci Creative, I run a studio that uses technology like this every day. And a lot of you that joined today, thank you for dialing in. We work with a lot of you to build these amazing experiences for museums and brands. And these spaces have important goals: to pass on information, to share different ways of seeing things, and to teach. And by my standard, if you leave with something you never forget, just like the bananas, you've done your job as a designer. But in museums, technology can actually work against our goal of teaching visitors, and it can hinder our ability to retain information. Okay, nobody write in the chat yet and like beat me up and throw tomatoes. We will talk about how to make technology good, so just hang in there with me. And I'll explain more of this in a bit, but what I want to explore today is how we use our physical bodies in the digital world. How can we reclaim attention in our public spaces? And as Josh, you posted this week on LinkedIn, I don't know if you did this on purpose because you knew I was coming to talk to you today, but most importantly, how can our work win in the dopamine economy? And the thing that gets me the most excited about this is really asking questions like, how can new technologies serve the oldest human tech we have using our physical bodies and to achieve our goals of learning together? And so this is what we're going to talk about today. So Matthew, our Chief Creative Officer, and I talk about this all the time. And he always loves to reference this quote by E.O. Wilson and the tension between technology and our caveman brains. And by evolutionary standards, we are just still so young as a species. And if you think about it, over a period of 4 billion years, it was only 65,000 years ago when our first complex tools emerged. But technology is moving so fast. And when we look around places like the animal kingdom, where animals like this share 98% of our DNA with us, and we live in a purely physical world, they are learning by playing. And that's how we learn too. So play shouldn't be a bad word. It's really just how we're wired neurologically as species. And as a society, we've separated this whole thing about learning and play, but our brains are hardwired to remember better and when we're joyful and we're engaged. So we have to make our learning fun. In fact, this book from almost 100 years ago called Homo Ludens argues that the most of our advancements of civilization have actually come from play. Law, sports, theater. Play is how we learn. And if we do our best when we use every part of ourselves, we're going to be learning. And it's going to stick because learning with our bodies really means something. Movement, touching, grabbing attention, everything when you use your physical body with your heads, your hands, your hearts, it all connects to your memory. And that's the front door that we need to enter. And when each of these senses gets added, we get another hook that we can hang on to, another better memory that we can create. And as some of you know, and then we're reading about this, is that movement also gives your brain more blood and more oxygen so you can think clearer. And so physical activity gives you that instant feedback to fix mistakes fast. But digital tools are making it easier to not use our bodies and still get information. Everyone loves ChatGPT, does some of the thinking for you all the time really quick. And most schools, and as you know, Josh, you mentioned kids go back to school. I don't think my son even knows how to write cursive. They're not teaching it anymore. And despite strong evidence that it helps our brains actually retain information. Tell me the last time you all have sat in a meeting and taken detailed notes about what you're talking about. I know that I'm continuing to use tools. Oh, thank you, Josh, with your Post-its. I'm using tools today, and I'm sure you guys are too, with Otter AI and capturing notes for our meetings. So we feel like we can be more present in the moment with our conversations, but we're not retaining the information the whole time because we're actually not taking notes and writing it down. It's making it easier to get those notes, but are we taking everything away that we should be? So now let's think about your body memories. Can you all think today about a song you haven't heard in 20 years, but you still know every lyric? Please put us something in the chat here if you can think of one. Can you remember what your grandmother's kitchen smells like? Can you remember your first boyfriend's cologne and what that smelled like? My boyfriend used to wear Abercrombie and Fitch's cologne, and I can still smell it. So gross now looking back on that. Can you remember, like, if you haven't ridden a bike for 10 years, do you think you could get right back on it tomorrow and ride it again? Because our senses are smarter than our brains, and we retain 35% more information from our noses than from our eyes. Back in 2011, researchers named this digital amnesia, and they called it the Goehle effect. It's really about cognitive offloading. And what they found is that information is really easy to look up, but our brains don't bother to retain the content. So most young people don't even know their best friend's phone number these days. Do you guys remember your phone number from growing up? You have to punch it in every time. But if I asked you to remember someone's phone number today that you don't have to punch in every time, can you remember it? No, because all you have to do is press a button, it's auto stored. And now AI is letting us summon information at will. We have to remember things as becoming less and less important and part of our lives. And as long as we have this internet connection, we're going to get by, right? I don't think so. It's all about these screens and they're hypnotizing. And Josh, you talked about that this week with your son. We spend so much time on them. Our willingness to binge shows instead of going to see our friends. Our kids don't know any other world. I think even like tech startups in Silicon Valley are trying to create a whole movement where they won't even let their kids have technology when they're the ones creating it, which is just mind-blowing. I know I give my kids technology when we're in a restaurant to calm them down, just like take my phone and play a game. But am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right choice? I don't think so, but it's easy. But we're still stuck in that our bodies are at one evolutionary jump from cavemen, and we just keep resorting back and back and back to technology. And our technology is talking to us. It's actually telling us and showing us proof that the addiction is real. Look at this screen grab from our CCO's phone. Look how many hours he spent on average last week on his phone. 17 hours and 56 minutes. Now, I don't know if he ever sleeps. We have to work through that on a separate conversation. But what I'm telling you is that the idea that this iPhone is horrifyingly telling you that we constantly are going over and over again with these hours and spending so much time on our technology, and we're not changing any of those behaviors. And there's this guy named Marshall McLuhan, and if he knows anything, he has taught us as a Canadian media professor from the 70s. He looked at how we understand media and use it simply. And I really love this, and we've been talking about it in our work. It's the idea of hot and cold media. The idea that the temperature explains how many senses are firing at any given time. So if you think about it, look at books, look at radio, they're only using one of your senses, right? Your eyes or your ears. Your brains have to fill in the rest. But now think about an IMAX movie or a virtual reality experience or the Sphere in Las Vegas. They are red hot. Sound, visuals, seat vibrations. The media does the work for you. And that's why most people prefer books to movies, because your brain's imagination is so much richer than what's on the screen. So a simple rule that we think about here at Luci is really thinking about now using hot moments to spark people's interest in environments, but let's let the rest of the space provide some relief. Let's keep it cool. Visitors can return to the cooler spaces to wrestle with what they just experienced in the hotter zones. Let's design spaces to make sure that people are doing the hard work in the cold spaces of making their own connections. You know, memory loves participation. Psychologists documented this in the 70s, and they called it the generation effect. A little friction now, better retention later, and we know learning sticks when a student co-creates it. People remember far better when they figure things out themselves. So let's go back to the banana, my theme of the day. If I give you the word banana, you'll probably forget it a week later. But if I ask you a yellow fruit that starts with a B, you're going to remember it because your brain had to work for it. And that small act of creation and strengthens your memories. It fuses with your emotions, and it makes the story yours, which is why interactive moments in museums where visitors build, test, and play are remembered more than any text panel you can put on that wall and ask them to read. Everyone knows this video, the screen zombies, and I don't think they necessarily like screens, but the screen's doing all the feeling and the framing for them. So our task in museums and classrooms and public spaces is to hand some of that work back to visitors so they can own it themselves. And when you think about screens, I think they're causing other problems too. And I think we all can hold up our phones and say this is a problem because it's creating something called absent presence. It's the idea and that phenomenon of you're always carrying your device. And consequently, it's becoming a barrier or a filter up to you in the world. So think about when you take your phone to a concert and think about all the times you held up that phone at that concert and you recorded Coldplay playing a song and you held it up there and you're like, I got to get the next song. I got to get the next song. Have you ever really gone back to watch those videos and listen to those songs? Or even your kids' recitals. How many times have you stood there in that recital holding up your camera, making sure you didn't miss one moment of that? But how many times do you go back and watch it? We're literally not present in the moment, experiencing those moments in real life and feeling it with our whole bodies because we're watching it through a screen. And our clients are demanding this in an environment. We also are creating these selfie moments. And that's preventing us all from being fully present and showing up what we remember and how. Those moments aren't sticking in the same way. And the irony is we're taking so many pictures and really going back to look at that photo library of 100 pictures from that one vacation. And some stats are showing that I think it's as low as like 19% of people are going back and looking at those pictures you've documented. And because we're carrying these devices, they've literally become the default mechanism to every moment in our life. When you're waiting in line, I bet you're checking your phone. When you're in a boring meeting, I bet you're checking your phone. When you go to the bathroom, are you checking your phone and playing on it? I'm sure you are, even though you won't admit it. Because tech companies have delivered these microbursts of content perfectly to slot into these moments of discomfort and experiences. I think the absolute worst thing is this whole idea of experience plagiarism. So when we watch someone else experience life through a film or video, reaction videos, unboxing videos of toys and games. Look at Ryan's World. I'm sure those of you who have kids know Ryan's World. He is now a billionaire child actor who has made all of his money from opening up toys on YouTube, and you watch him open up that toy and he talks about it. This is the time where we could actually be experiencing things ourselves, not watching other people experience them in their worlds. And the result of that is that regardless of our actual unique locations, the experience of the world is identical and we're always looking down. We've literally become separated from our environments. And for social spaces, the stakes are high because visitors no longer need content. They can get it anywhere. What they need are questions, curiosity, context, and they need a reason to lean in together across multiple generations and to put that phone down because the experience is more compelling than their feed. And it's really stiff competition. And we're all, I know, on this call trying to figure out how to do that. In the luxury space, this problem has become such a problem that resorts and hotels are actually charging a premium to go have a digital detox. So this is an amazing resort. It's called Petite St. Vincent, and they're actually charging you extra money to be unreachable. They take your phone from you when you arrive and they'll give it to you when you leave. But we are paying for this digital detox. And those of you that have read this book, the devices can contribute to emotional issues too. Self-esteems are everywhere, and as Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation book has told us, phone-free childhood is a thing, and how do we actually bring it to life? Whether or not you agree with all of his ideas, the movement is resonating because it's named something that parents feel in their bones, and I know I do. If we let the attention economy set the rules of childhood, we shouldn't be surprised by the outcomes. And I think we're starting to actually see that in practice today and the problems that are being caused by it. So is a perfect experience one in a museum that doesn't use tech at all? No, I don't think so. But I just want to pause to speak to how Luci is thinking about design today and what we're trying to do. And as we think about all these things we've learned, we're trying to use them to inform these moments to create what we like to call imprint experiences. And by that, I mean deliberately crafted experiences that stick with you long after you've left. One that shapes how you see the world. And if you're really lucky, it changes how you understand your role in the world and your place in it. And I'm going to share with you 4 different ways to do that to connect to people's brains. The first is building for participation, not just presentation. How do we actually make visitors the participants and the focus of our experiences, not passive viewers and spectators? We need to design the visitor journey to have peaks and endings that people carry with them. How do you change the cadence of those visitor journeys? How are we investing in staff as much as we're investing in human encounters with technology? And lastly, how are we creating and embracing surprise and delight? Because novelty is what the brain is prioritizing now. And more often than not, all of this requires using your whole body. And we're calling this at Luci whole body learning. It's one of actually our core values. And it means that having multi-sensory inputs ensures that there are more entry points for visitors, where we can meet them where they are, in terms of knowledge, neurodiversity, passion, all of their senses, and allow them to come in and be participants in that using their physical aspects of their body. But it also requires emotions and participation. Memory and emotions are so linked that you'll get nowhere if you just start sharing raw information at them. And no one does this better than theme parks. And they do it so well because they transform these spaces into places. They do what I like to see is called world building, that nothing gets you embedded into content faster than stepping into the environment and being part of that story. And stories are how our brains are wired to understand the world. So having a clear scene setting tool fast tracks you and fast tracks your brain and our ability to start it firing its memory engine quickly. You know, when I was a kid, I used to think about museums and how they were just going places to learn and go get information. You walked in, you read the labels, you memorized a few facts, and maybe you even got a gold star when you went back to school the next day to tell your teacher what you learned. But years later, I honestly can't tell you half of the facts that I learned there. But what I can tell you, and vividly what I remember, is how it felt the first time a staff member knelt down next to me, looked me in the eye, and answered my question like it mattered. I don't remember the label, but I do remember those moments. You know, computers process data, but we don't. Our brains are built to capture stories and emotions. And if we want to truly understand what people value in museums, in classrooms, and even in baseball stadiums, we need to stop designing for information transfer and start designing for memory creation. At Luci, we've been talking a lot about Daniel Kahneman's work. He's a Nobel Prize winner, and he came to this visionary when he started to talk about memory making. And he has this incredible quote. I'm going to read it to you guys because it really sticks with us. We actually don't choose between experiences. We choose between the memories of experiences. And even when we think about the future, we don't think about the future normally as experiences. We actually think about our future as anticipated memories. And it's so huge because for years, museums have often equated innovation with adding technology to attract new audiences. It's a natural response to institutions competing with so many of these options for how to spend your free time, but we just need a simple switch. And we need to remember that we're not competing for attention anymore. We're actually competing for memories. And we'd all be designing differently if that was our lens. And if visitors don't have the sense of agency, if they're literally not the hero of their own story, it's not going to work either. Because scenography and stories are multisensory and all that engagement helps. But where the magic really happens is with other people, especially staff. Human beings, docents, teachers, a fan next to you in a game, they can connect in ways that no other medium can. Because when another person laughs at us or answers us or surprises us, our brains just flood with oxytocin and dopamine. And these chemicals don't just make us feel good in the moment, they actually are tagging our brains with the experience so that years later, we remember it as part of our story. But somehow, we're quick to budget for a monitor over a staff member, under the assumption that it's more convenient or practical or operationally optimized solution, only to have 6 months later an out of order sign on your exhibit. But within an Imprint Experiences, technology still should play a role. It's just not the hero. The visitor is. And that doesn't mean no media. It just means that we need to leverage media in a way to increase participation. Look at Connected Worlds. It's over 10 years old now, and it feels like it was just created yesterday because it's so compelling. It puts people inside the game. Look at Dimensions and Testimony. It allows people to literally talk to the past and connects you emotionally with one of the most difficult topics in history, the Holocaust. Look at Potion's work at the Tenement Museum. It forces strangers on a tour to talk to one another. The technology is driving the conversation and designing people to have conversations. So if you think about projection mapping flooding a room, what are you inviting people to do with it? If you're including AR because you want it to steal attention, how are you using it to create debates? And how does it spark those moments between visitors, not just between your eyes and the screen? Or if music is swelling in the background, does it cue a shared ritual or does it drown out the human voice we came to hear? Everyone can remember in the Harry Potter store in Universal, when the moment that child is chosen as the one with the wand, the music swells, he's keyed up with lighting, and he's placed on that stage. Technology was hidden and it's subliminal, but it was used to emphasize that moment and create that emotion and make that child part of that story. But you'll notice that so many of these examples are novel. When tech is embedded and it's hidden, it really can retain some of that magic. But at this point, what we're seeing is we're just so flooded with monitors and headsets and devices in our normal lives that we need to create things visitors can't do at home. So how are we using sensors, haptics, skeleton detection? When the gear disappears but the story remains, we know design can do its job. And to your credit, Josh, I think Blue Cadet's work at the 81st Street studio ticks all these boxes. Look at this. It's a whole body learning space that's full of tech, but it doesn't feel techy. It's full of activities, but it lets the visitor completely dictate their journey. It has staff that empowers the whole thing for visitors with a layer of warm hospitality that's rare within formal museums and institutions. And the final component of all of these imprint experiences is novelty. We need newness still, something that's increasingly difficult in today's hyper-documented world. Something unexpected happens, I'm sure it's on everybody's feeds in 4 minutes. There's no surprise anymore. But when we can truly create these serendipitous moments that you can't plan for, that are harder to document and less replicatable, magic happens. And that's why Meow Wolf, as you all can see, has started now adding costume staff that just appear randomly in their worlds. They surprise you, they delight you. The work of Punch Drunk and Third Rail or the Sleep No Mores of the world. Everyone has a different experience every time. And that's when people start traveling the world to experience these things again and again. And staff can do that really well too in museum spaces, adapting in real time to their audience's needs and interests by having conversations. And this is where seasonality and programming can really shine because it adds that layer of newness to existing infrastructure that we're asking our clients to invest in. And the work we've done with Astrobotic at the Moonshot Museum shows how that experience can actually extend far beyond the footprint. They're only working in about 5,000 square feet, but layered onto this is so much programming and content. It's always a new space when visitors come in, every time, depending on who's powering it and who's visiting. And in a sense, it becomes an extension of the Astrobotic brand and for the city of Pittsburgh's highest ambitions of inspiring the next generation of scientists. So I know I've been talking a lot, but I want to take a moment here and invite discussion in a second and wrap things up. But I want to say, for the record, I don't think the path forward is more or less technology. I think it really is just a better use of it. We need to use tech to widen the sensory palette, not narrow it. And we need to use it to reduce friction so we can increase human connection. And so I want to invite you all to tackle this issue with me. And over the next 30 days, I want to invite this challenge. I want to ask you, can you transform one piece of passive content in your projects into something participatory? Can you employ the generation effect? Can you take a screen-based experience? And what if you layered a staff behavior into it? that enhanced or extended that experience? And what if you could follow up on something that exists today, an experience that you created, and ask visitors what they remember from their visit a week later? This is the mission before us, and we need to work together to ensure that technology is enhancing experiences, that it's not becoming another screen that our visitors run to in search of a dopamine hit. How do we use our technology to be more present, not less? How do we use it to reclaim our humanity, not lose it? How do we use our whole bodies, not just our thumbs or our eyes? And if we work together, I know we can do it with all of these amazing brains and technology that's out there that we're experimenting with. So before I wrap up, I just wanted to show you all some awesome books and resources that we've been studying. If you want to take a quick screen grab, I'd also love to hear from you if there's other books and resources that you're studying and seeing that talk about memory making and how to tell stories from an experience that are lasting, how you're using technology in projects successfully to create these moments. Um, and I would love to open it up to questions from all of you and hand it back to Josh so we can continue the discussion. So thanks for giving me some time today.
Amazing. AJ, thanks so much. Absolutely loved it. That was really, really fantastic. All right. So I think everyone knows the drill. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or, come on screen and ask it. I think you queued up an amazing conversation here. So also, or just like throw it in the chat once everyone's done thanking AJ, and we'll do it. But I'll kind of kick it off a little bit. By the way, I 100% like vibe with everything that you're saying there. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is thinking about like, designing for emotional state, and designing for the emotional state where people are receptive to the content that you're trying to convey. And then, like, obviously, if you're talking about the Holocaust versus interactive play center, those are different emotional states that you're going for. But I would love to think a little bit about, I love to talk about sort of the intentionality of sort of setting those emotional states so that people are receptive to the experiences that you'll deliver to them.
I think, when we're starting our project, one of the most important things that we like to ask our clients are, what do you want visitors to know? What do you want them to do? But the most important part, what you just asked, Josh, is what do you want your visitors to feel? And if you're just having them what you want them to know and what you want them to do, the feeling part doesn't matter because that's the outcome, right? And so I think what we need to start doing is designing for what do you want them to feel first, and then back into, okay, what do you want them to know and do in order to get there?
Yeah, and also like I feel like sometimes setting the feeling actually makes them receptive to the information.
Yep.
Like it's like I think that like the Holocaust Museum, like was probably the first time I saw a lot of this stuff, which is like you felt so deeply that
Yeah.
you would absorb that content. I don't think you would if it was just the content. I think you would actually absorb it.
Well, I think what the Holocaust museums do, and especially Dimensions and Testimony, we've worked on a lot of Holocaust museums now.
Yeah,
And what they do is they're telling stories. But what you're not getting is that first person, what it was like to be there and what the experience was for somebody else like you to have a similar experience. And that's what Dimensions and Testimony does so well is it allows you to personally engage with the person who actually sets it up as a story to say, I was just like you. I lived a life just like you. And then this thing happened to me, and this is how I experienced it. And that's what that technology breaks that kind of barrier down and invites you into that conversation that you couldn't have any other way.
yeah, no, absolutely. The other thing I was thinking about was how like museums became kind of obsessed with selfies for a while, and it's like the
Still are.
thinking
I
they
think this,
still are, aren't they? Yeah, yeah. All right, I have my theories, but do you have a theory as to why?
well, they want the content. It's free marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what's your theory?
Well, I think one is free marketing, but I think marketing is actually the thing that's interesting is like I think that it's measurable, and
You
it's
can
like a
track how many.
you
Yeah.
could be like, yeah. We had that, and you could like look at impact, and it's like it's taking sort of like the advertising world and imposing those values on a totally different space where
Yeah.
like and it like kind of ruins the experience. It's like sort of like imposing the McDonald's business model on like a Michelin star restaurant. Like it's like, is that really what you're trying to do, you know?
Yeah, I think measuring impact is really hard. And even as we talk about memory making and the experiences we're creating, we haven't yet figured out how do you measure whether or
Yeah.
not you created a memory for someone or an imprint experience for your visitors. And I think the other day you had someone on that was talking about measuring impact
Yeah.
with that. I would love to hear from people here of how they're measuring it in their projects as a success metric.
Yeah.
I think to me, it's still intangible, but it's something we aspire for.
All right. Well, Jeff Thatcher has a question. Jeff, do you want to ask your question?
Oh, sorry, I just wrote it in there. Let me go back and read it. Sorry.
Fair enough.
So curious if there are any good examples of using old tech to reach Gen Z as they have an obsession with nostalgia. One of my personal imprints or memories was seeing the 96 slide projectors in the early 1990s at the Kentucky Derby Museum create a 360 experience. So who is doing an 8-track experience, or is anyone running actual film through a projector?
I would like to ask that to the group here.
Well, I mean, it reminds me of what I worked on when I was at Potion, where for the Tenement Museum, we took vintage sewing machines that were used in a sweatshop in Chinatown and made them capacitive so that you couldn't get the story unless you physically touched the objects. And then it triggered the projection of the narratives and interviews. So it kind of really got you hands on with the actual objects that the interviewees used.
That's a good one.
All
There's
right.
technology and that's hidden too, which is also, a great example.
I'd say, it's interesting too, because like you had mentioned Sleeping No More and Punch Drunk. But like I think one of the things that's really interesting about that is that so much of it's haptic. And like there's so much physicality and there's also like such distinct smell.
Yeah.
And they also have the bar that's like the taste, like that idea of like the multi-sensory stuff is very, which I think is one of the reasons why it imprints so well in memory.
Well, it's whole body. There you go, right there.
Yeah,
All of
totally.
your senses. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? I have so many questions. We could talk about questions. So I think one of the things would be interesting is like, so when you first engage with your clients and you're trying to kind of get them into this thinking or like trying to like guide them towards this thinking, how do you do that? And then how do you also sort of like back them out from sort of like some of the more like traditional tactics that they might want to go to?
I mean, I think today clients, it's really challenging to get them to think beyond what they know, right?
Yeah.
I went somewhere, I saw this experience, I took a picture of it, I'm bringing it to you as a design firm, and I want you to make this thing for me. And I think as we start to think about how that relates or is resonating with their visitors for their story, we have to step back and ask, who are their visitors? Why does it matter to them? And what was the outcome of the tangible thing that they want to do as a result? And I think that's constantly a challenge. I'm sure you're all having that with your clients too, of like, it's not a one size fits all solution. It really is stepping back to say, again, back to what is the feeling that you want to generate? Who's the audience that you're trying to connect with? And then what's the proper solution in order to kind of bridge that experience from start to finish to create those imprint moments? And it's a huge part of that is the whole body learning part too, which is like, we're not just putting a screen on the wall. It's not just a projected four wall experience you step into floor to ceiling. There's got to be a moment of engagement where you're making the visitor literally the protagonist in the story, allowing them to make their own choices and have agency to go through and have that holistic experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
to them.
Mike, you had a question. I can ask for you if you
Oh,
like.
no, yeah,
Oh, go
yeah,
for
I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Hey, AJ, how's it going?
Good.
I feel like in lots of conversations I've had with clients in the past, we would advocate for, oh, it'd be great to have like a docent or volunteer or a staff member like lead this experience or provide that sort of one-on-one memory kind of imprinting environment, and it's really hard to get them to to make that choice. A staff member, especially a paid staff member, is so much more expensive than a screen or the one-off cost of developing some sort of interactive. And I didn't know if from your experience or for anyone else's here where they've been successful in that conversation of how do you get them to see the value in the sort of human component to an experience, and be willing to kind of invest in it, because I think that's really it does make a huge difference, but it is hard to kind of get them to, and it usually isn't part of what exhibit designers are hired to do. We design a physical experience with media and interactives, but to advocate for actual like human staff is not something that's typically kind of what a client would be expecting us to sort of be advocating for or as part of our work. So just
Well,
curious.
and typically, Mike, the hardest part too is it's not just a staff member to stand in the space and to ask questions either. You have to train them and give them knowledge so that they can actually
Absolutely.
engage the content
Yeah. Mhm.
meaningfully. And that's a whole other investment.
Yeah.
Sherry, I see your hands up.
AJ, can I jump in on that one for a
Oh
sec?
yeah,
Oh,
please.
does Sherry want to jump in on
No,
that one?
go ahead. I'll jump in after. Go for it.
Oh, no, no. I mean, I'm gonna say, so like one of the things I love to do when I go, particularly art museums, is like I always talk to the security guards. Because like they're all there, and a lot of them are very, very knowledgeable and they're very, very interested. Like I was at the Dallas Museum of Art and like I went like down a rabbit hole with the security guard, which was really awesome. But then I'll also say like I was at LACMA this weekend and one of the security guards was there and like very, very nice, engaging with it with the some of the guests. And she was like, see this painting? It reminds me of Bumblebee from Transformers because it's yellow. And look, you can see his face there and blah, blah, blah. See, art is just kind of like, what you make of it. I'm like, bullshit. It's not true. Fuck you. Like, do the fucking homework, read the wall label. Like, that's not what it's about. Like, and so like, if you have people there, I think one, hiring people that might be willing to engage, and this woman was definitely willing to engage, but then also people that might actually like take the time and like be interested or give them the opportunity to learn a little bit about it,
Yeah,
so that they can convey like good knowledge. Because like that woman's being paid regardless,
right.
and like and she's super eager to learn. And I actually like was like, look, can like let me riff with on you about this a little bit. And she was actually super receptive to it. So I think taking advantage of the resources you already have is a good play. Sorry,
That's a
all
good
right, Sherry, I cede the
point.
floor.
Well, thank you. AJ, thank you so much. What I'm loving about this conversation is something we do employ where I manage a large museum and technology gallery for Autodesk. And
Hmm.
we have a tour ambassador program. And that tour ambassador program is so key to hitting those aha moments.
Yeah,
A, because we talk a lot about cross industry different, we have 17 different exhibits. Some of them are interactive, some of them aren't. There's screens, there's panels. But the best part is the engagement with the tour ambassador because we can have anyone come through there from students to celebrities to Congress people. And that ambassador has to know how to switch the subject from like media and entertainment to
yeah,
construction and architecture and tap into the conversation with the individuals we're giving the tours to. And those are the aha moments. Those are the people the feedback we
yeah.
get is like such a great tour. I learned so much from Kevin or whatever it is. And we have a full-on training program. We train them, we go over stuff. We have a script written. That script, you go off script because you need to personalize it. But what I'm hearing now is this validation of putting the investment in the human and putting the investment in the human to tell the story because it does work. I've seen it happen. And now I'm thinking of, how do we're going to need more roles to fill as we like get busier and busier and have different people come through. So this is helping me with a really good business case for my leadership. So
Good,
thank you.
good.
Yeah.
I can send you the deck if you want, and you can repitch it.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
All right, so Sherry, I'm going to do a callback to one of AJ's slides, unreasonable hospitality,
Yes.
which is about the creating of 11 Madison Park, which is like what was the number one restaurant in the world. I think there's a lot that can be learned from that there, or even just like watching the bear. Like, look at how they train. Like, if you go to a really good restaurant, look at how they train their wait staff. Like they are very intentional. Like those people are not there to just deliver you food. They're there to deliver an experience. And like if you look at hospitality, if you look at like hotels, like the Ritz-Carlton has a very rigorous training
Mhm.
program, and a very codified training program. Like they're very, very intentional in making sure that that frontline staff is like trained and like all and knowledgeable and then also just like lovely.
Yeah. For example, before I got there and was running the program, we had people who were just volunteering kind of and telling stories. Just some of them were great because they're like old company stories, but really just wild variety of like no constant, no continued theme or connection. And I did like let some people go because literally they like, I like this exhibit because my grandson came in and poked a hole in it one time. And you're like, that's not the brand narrative. But like
Hmm.
it's still adding some variety and interesting stories, but definitely like having a lot of training is part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, like test this in your environment. Go to like a really good restaurant, like like a Nancy Silverman restaurant or what, and ask your waiter about the food, and they're not going to tell you about their like like it's going to be they're going to do a good job. All right, Bill, you got to. I'm sorry, AJ, this is not my talk. just,
No,
just
this is
you're,
great. This is what I was hoping we would do. Is it's got to stimulate conversation. I'm
all
done.
right.
I did
Bill,
my part.
Bill is raising his hand though. Sorry, AJ, go.
Yeah, Bill, go
Hey,
ahead.
first of all, really great presentation. Loved it. Sort of got knee deep in that U.S. cellular program last year and this year, which was the hands-free, like the five minutes away from screens program. But sort of going back to what Sherry's talking about, like in the experiential world, like the agency world where where I am and live, we have that saying like stop doing technology for technology's sake. Stop trying to shoehorn in a piece of technology to get a brand affinity with the customer when it's not needed. So we've sort of done some intentional work in the creative side to say, let's see what an experience looks like without a use of technology. Like we have to track it, we have to do the ROX, but can we do this without having the technology the as part of the experience for the customer? Do we go back? We've talked about using those phone sleeves that they use at schools now for people to drop their phones in before they enter the experience. Like we tried that. We tried that at Coachella. That was just sort of a miss. The client didn't want to do that, obviously, but there was like there was some movement towards trying to get away from the phone just a little bit. And I'm not saying US Cellular was that client, but I was sort of like talking about the overall arching thing that US Cellular had a pretty wild campaign regarding like, phones free for a while from a cellular provider.
I will tell you, Bill, I went to the Coldplay concert, one of the tour right now that's going on, and I didn't want to miss a moment. And I literally filmed the whole concert with my phone because I wanted to be able to go home and show my kids.
What
But
did you miss?
but there was a song that Chris Martin actually had a call to action in the middle of the show where he just said to everybody, please put your phones away for the next 8 minutes and can we all just be together? And everybody put their phones away. I mean, there were a few people next to me that didn't listen, but I have to tell you, like, it was one of those moments, it was a completely different kind of experience for
Yeah.
me than watching it, trying to capture every single moment through that lens. So, I really appreciate the things that you're trying to do to intentionalize it. And I just wonder how else we can personalize experiences and give visitors a way to take some of that experience home with them through the technology we can put in in the exhibits that we're creating versus asking them to use their device to create it themselves.
Yeah.
Clay had a question. Clay, ask away.
Yeah, I guess maybe you can talk a little bit because this is something I'm always curious about. How I think it's a fine line between wanting to have your visitors experience certain emotions and get certain takeaway kind of ideas from an exhibition and not wanting to feel like it's kind of on rails, like you're kind of, spoon feeding it to them or ramming it down their throats. Giving them a chance to, I don't know, explore or confront maybe ambiguities or, possible variations or arguments or explore the full space as opposed to just sort of a conveyor belt that just feeds the emotions to them. And I'm wondering, I think it's a fine line between those two ideas. You definitely want them to come home, take away certain ideas and emotions, but how do you avoid them feeling like they had no choice but to experience that thing, like they're being almost manipulated?
Matthew, do you want to answer this?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
So one of our other values is meeting people where they are, and I think that one of the things that's really tricky about the myth of peak and end experiences. And if you just have a great peak, then everyone has a good, experience at your space. Is that everyone has a different definition of what peak is. We all have different need states. And if I ask my son what he wants out of a museum versus my grandmother versus me, we all have different agendas. Like I want my kid to learn. My kid just wants to have fun. My grandmother wants to have a photo together to show that we're spending time together. And if you're not answering for those different need states within the same environment, you're not going to get a rich, robust experience. You need all those different entry points because what people's definition of success is very, very different. So a lot of the work we do here is figuring out, are we answering each demographic's like overall need states in a different way so that you can have different ways of accessing it and experiencing it? Because it isn't just one monolithic sort of narrative. It is a lot of different ways. And that's where the multi-sensory comes in also, making sure that we each have different ways that like naturally gravitate towards that we can respond to. So it's very tricky, but if you address it that way from this need state perspective, it actually objectifies some of the things you're trying to solve, and all of the subjective things that people want in an experience become harder to argue with when you kind of can quantify where there are actually meaningful metrics there.
And that's why we start audience research up front so often, to actually develop what those need states are for them versus assume we know what they are.
Yeah. All right, Claire, I'm going to throw one thing on there because the experience feeling like on rails. I want to throw a little bit of shade at theme park designs, because those are like so many of those dark rides. They're just films. They're just straightforward, and like I've had a couple clients, and particularly since I moved to LA, there's like a lot of like stakeholders who are filmmakers, and they're like, I know how to make a museum experience, and we're like, no, you don't, dude, because like those like. Because like a lot of times, there's a lot of mediums that are start to finish, they're linear, and they are always consumed in the same order. Like museums are not that way. Like you have to build in serendipity, you have to build in different outcomes, you have to build in different variations. In some ways, like it is a very, very interesting medium to be operating in. But yeah, like filmmakers and theme parks are notoriously bad at.
Well, that's why, Josh, I referenced the wand experience at Universal.
Yeah.
Different, right?
Yeah, totally.
And there's a protagonist, you're putting the kid in the story, and like you don't know what that kid's going to do when they're standing there. They have to improv very quickly in that moment, but still be in character and deliver that messaging and that joy.
Oh yeah. I'm just crapping on dark rides, but
No,
yeah,
but
I think, that's an amazing experience. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I love it, love it. All right, AJ, Rebecca had I thought was like a really lovely question. Maybe we can sort of wrap this up with.
Oh, yeah.
What are like some of the dream projects, or like things that what are the things that you would want to tackle? Like what are the things that you're really excited to innovate on, or to work on in your work? And what would be a dream project? One that you're not doing now.
Well, I think what a challenge I'm trying to figure out how to tackle in terms of the kinds of museums is, how do you actually make a history museum that can go back 200 years, compelling and engaging, and not books on the wall, right? There's so much history to tell. It's full of artifacts. I don't think we want to put living history beings standing in the exhibit. I mean, maybe we do, to be your docents to engage in that story, but how do you make history fun again? How do you get kids to actually, and families to learn from the past to inspire them for the future? And I think, and I have to say, candidly, I don't think we've solved the solution yet, but we're certainly exploring how do we learn from all of the other kinds of projects we're working on to inform and make history fun. Sorry, Mike Dennison at the American History Museum, but
we're working on the same thing. Let's work on it together. Let's do that.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so I think we're kind of at time right now. AJ, this was so interesting. I love this topic. Obviously, this is one that this is a very native topic, I think, for me and for you. I love hearing your perspective here. Before we wrap up today, is there any way that people can get in touch with you? I know that you're going to be at Aztec next week in San Francisco.
I think
know
we have to call it ASTC now, Josh. I think it can't.
What?
Yep. ASTC.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, because of the acronym?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So,
ASTC. All right.
We will be at ASTC. I think Lucy is actually giving 3 different panel presentations next week. So we'll be there with a full squad. So if you want to meet up there, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or AJ@lucicreative.com. I'd also just love to hear from everybody who is on this call today about experiences or how you're using memory making in your work, to see what we can learn from each other. We haven't solved it. We just are really passionate about it. So if there's ways in which you can share that or are open to having a sidebar call, please, please, please reach out. Again, aj@lucicreative.com. I'll sync you up with our team, where we can have a chat.
Awesome. All right, AJ, thanks so much. It was lovely seeing you. Thanks so much for this presentation. It was really, really provocative and
Thanks for
interesting.
having me, Josh. So fun.
Thank you everyone for joining. I hope to see you at a future spaces. And AJ, maybe I'll pop up and see you in San Francisco next week. We'll see how we go.
Awesome.
All right. See you everyone. Have a great one.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.